Welcome, I'm the Deadwood Jedi. This is going to be another Raid Shadow Legends video. We're talking about the Lizardmen faction wars today, and I thought we'd go through and see what we can't learn. So I've built a team, obviously using all epics. I didn't bring in any rares because one of the things about this faction, the rare champions suck. They're just not good whatsoever. But one of the great things about Lizardmen is I think actually it's one of the stronger factions in this game because they're all good. All the epics, all the legendaries, not all of them are, they're not all great, right? But they all have their uses, and I think that's a really nice thing in a faction to have, right? So there's not a lot of selection. They don't have a ton of champions either, but the ones that are there are definitely useful and so worth considering. So I was able to build a pretty successful team without too much issue this way, and I feel like you could really mix it up a lot and utilize a lot of different champions to kind of come up with the best strategy that you might want to do in order to beat this faction. So anyway, we're going to go through it. We'll look at all those champions. We'll look at the faction, the list of champions that they have and kind of talk about what we're looking to bring in and what we're not looking to bring in. I'll show you obviously the champions that I built at the very end. We'll do a run on 21 and talk about all the different bosses on our way there. But real quick, I just want to say, when you're building your team, you got to make sure that you're bringing in certain stuff to make these teams successful. You need to bring in some kind of CC, some kind of healing and or reviving and or carry, right? Ally protection is incredibly valuable. Shields are great. But you also need to bring in, your normal debos. Decreased defense is absolutely vital. Decreased attack can be really vital too to help you stay alive. And then you need damage on top of all of that. So there's a few things that you definitely need in order to be successful at this, but I'm very happy with the team that I was building. So let's go ahead and take a look. Let's first talk about the champions in this faction. I really appreciate you coming by to watch this video. And if you enjoy it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below, the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. And of course, if you enjoyed today's music, we have that Soundstripe link down below in the pinned comment description of this video, along with my code Deadwood Jedi to save yourself 15%. And of course, if you're looking for account work, you can find that on my website, deadwoodjedi.com. So when we talk about the champions in Lizardmen, obviously there's a lot of legendaries, and generally they're all very, very good. They do different things, right? Vergumkar, Vargal, maybe not top tier champions, but they are really useful for stuff like this because they can help keep the rest of your team alive. But even when we're talking about, obviously Draco, Krisk, Fushan, Nekmo, Chagger, Ramatu, Roxam, Bathatha, Razin, all really good champions. So if you have a legendary, I definitely recommend utilizing them. But we want to talk about the rest of the champions here. And this is where I think the real strength of this faction comes in, because the epics are really, really good. I find all of them, literally all of them, to be useful, at least on some level. I'm actually going to be using Jarang because he brings in, he has a stun ability, but he also has an AoE, decreased defense and decreased attack. And that's 3 times at random, but that's AoE enough, I would say, to be of use for us, right? We have Jareg, who I think is maybe the one champion you really need to have because of his ally protection ability, which is insanely good. He also brings in some healing. He's just a really underrated champion, and I highly recommend utilizing him if you can. Venomage is a great source of decreased attack and decreased defense. If you have him, I would definitely recommend that. Basilisk brings some stun abilities, which is nice, and some damage. Aox is great for poisons, especially when going against the bosses. I think Aox is really, really good. We've got Broodlord here, which is kind of an underrated champ with decreased speed. He has a single target ally protection ability. Really nice. Drake just got changes to his kit so that he now has an AoE decreased speed and accuracy, which is really nice. Jizzo's very good, obviously. Kind of an interesting kind of champion, right? You get him just from logging in, but he's got some interesting skills that can help keep the rest of your team alive, give you some counterattack, and definitely somebody I would actually recommend taking a look at utilizing if you're struggling. Quargun's really good. Broadma is a reviver. He is a permanent fusion champion, so that's definitely somebody I would recommend getting. And Scathix, I think, is really nice as well. So lots of good epics in this faction. Now the rares are trash. The rares are trash. You don't want the rares. You don't want the rares. I don't think any of these really will help you through the faction war very well. Now, there are a couple, to be noted. I actually think Cagebound's pretty decent. Like the one decent one here, right? A1 shield, decreased attack AoE, which I think is good, even if it's a small version, and an ally protection ability on the A3. That's enough, actually. You could build Cagebound to be your protection. So if you don't have a Jareg on your account, Cage Bound might be a really good option. Haru Specs has some speed stuff, right? He's got an increased speed ability. He's got a revive skill. There's definitely an argument to be made that he could be a valuable asset for your team. But outside of that, I'm pretty sure that you don't really want to build any of these other champions. So there's definitely some options here for you. The biggest limitation on this faction is just the sheer number of champions. You know, I think the quality of the epics is very high, and there is some duplicity, so you can definitely build the team that you want, even if you don't have one specific champion. The real issue is that there's just not a lot of options there. So let's take a quick look at the bosses. The stage 7 boss here, the mirror, always an annoying one, but on stage 7, none of the bosses are going to be much of an issue. You just need to build your champions up. This is the one that exchanges HP levels with you, steals your buffs, and gives you his debuffs. It's a very annoying champion when you're facing him at stage 21. It's not so bad at stage 7. But the big thing here, right, is just making sure that you have healing, because if he steals your HP, you need to heal back up. And then you just have to be dealing enough damage to kill him before this cooldown comes back around. That's it. And if you're really struggling, just make sure you're timing all the buffs and debuffs off of this mirror universe, the A2 skill. So you want to make sure you're putting your buffs on after that skill's used. You're putting your debuffs on after that skill's used. If you can do that, you'll be in good shape. Then we have the stage 14 boss, the Incinerator. This one shouldn't be much of an issue for you guys, right? It's got poison as a single target, but does decrease turn meter. Got True Fear as a single target, as an AoE, and poisons also decreases turn meter, and then has an HP burn when attacked. So the big thing here is really it's that turn meter. That's the problem with this boss. It's going to keep decreasing your turn meter over and over and over again. So having champions that can have resistance is good. Having protection on your team, whether that's increased defense, block debuffs is really valuable, or ally protection, all that stuff, shields, can be really, really helpful, because it's very likely that this boss is going to get multiple hits before your guys get the attack, and that can be problematic, definitely. So you want to be careful with that. But if you bring in a full team, you should be able to survive this pretty decently. The big thing is, especially if you can bring in a reviver like Broadmont, just build them tanky enough to survive, and then they can bring back the allies that do end up going down, unfortunately. The other thing that you can do, bring in speed. You're going to want that, definitely, right? Because you want to make sure that you're mashing the boss's turn meter so he's not taking multiple turns for every one that you're taking. And with the decrease in your turn meter, that can be very problematic. So I would definitely be looking at maybe bringing in some speed champions to be able to help make this easier. Somebody like Haru Specs could be a good addition at this point of the fight. And then, of course, we have stage 21, the Dueler. And this is obviously the one we want to focus on. This is one of the tougher bosses out there. The reason why will come pretty obvious here. It's the A1. It's a single target attack, ignores defense, and damage is based on the enemy max HP. This is going to be a really hard hit. Can easily one-shot your champion. So this is really, really tough to deal with. We'll get into how to deal with it in a little bit here. The A2 removes all debuffs from this champion, places a True Fear debuff on a random enemy for one turn, places stun on all enemies except that one enemy, and then the debuffs can't be resisted, and then grants an extra turn. This is really, really tough, and becomes really hard to deal with. True Fearing 4 of your champions, and then True Fearing 1 of your champions, stunning the other 4, and then giving himself an extra turn, because that extra turn is gonna, guess what, do that A1 hit where he ignores defense and does enemy max HP hit. So it can be really, really tough to deal with this. There's a couple pretty direct ways to deal with this. Well, there's only a couple buffs that will really help you. Obviously, Strengthen will be of advantage because it'll lower the amount of damage done. The other way is ally protection. I think it's absolutely vital to have ally protection against this boss, unless you're just strong enough to ignore everything. But generally, that's so valuable because it will at least have the damage and help keep your champions alive so they can heal up again. The other thing that you can bring in, Revive. If they go down, just bring them right back up, right? That's definitely something I would recommend. Another thing that can be really helpful is block debuffs. If you guys don't get stunned, you don't get True Feared, it becomes a lot easier to be able to cut in and revive, heal your team, survive all these hits and stuff. So that is definitely something I would recommend doing. Obviously, this is a tough boss, especially because his turn meter gets filled every time he loses HP. It makes it a much harder fight to deal with. So being able to, block the debuffs helps you ignore the True Fear, helps you ignore the stun, so you are getting your turns when you should get them, because they're not going to be super often. This boss is going to get a lot of attacks in. So that's what I would recommend. Now, as far as the team I'm bringing in, I've got Aox, I've got Scathix, I've got Jareg, Jareg and Jarang, excuse me, as well as Broadma here. So it's a pretty full team. I feel pretty good about it, and let's go ahead, jump in, and see what we can do. So as we jump in here, right, there's a few things that we want to look for, right? We were talking about before, right? Obviously, decreased attack and decreased defense is helpful. That's what Jarang is in here for, right? Giving us a decreased defense. Now, it is like a triple hit thing, so it is kind of random. It's not as direct as I would generally like, but we do have that here. I think absolutely that Venomage would be a better option generally. We've got Aox, who does give us an AoE decreased attack as well as crit rate, and that can be really helpful, keeping us alive. Jareg also has decreased attack on the A1, but most importantly has that ally protection. Now Broadma I think is super good for this, because not only does Broadma give us revive, but also increased speed buff, which I think is huge. And has a freeze on the A1 if we decide to give him any accuracy. We also have Scathix in, who is going to give us that block debuff skill, and I think that's super helpful, as well as a shield, which will help keep us alive. So you can see, like our Jarang is built pretty light, not very tanky, but because of Broadma, we're going to be able to revive him. So people will be dying in this fight, 100%. But we have Broadma there to bring them back when they do. In general, this isn't like the fastest of runs, right? But it is going to be effective. Jareg is huge for us, and I do have him built very well, but he'll help keep us alive. Broadma will help keep us alive, and after that, it's just a time game, just making sure that we have enough time passing that we can be successful. Aox is great for that, obviously, with the extension of the debuffs that do get landed and being able to put poisons up himself. Definitely a really good addition for this team. So one thing about these waves is they aren't very hard. The champions that we're facing aren't super difficult. You do got to watch out for Paragon more as an annoyance thing than anything else. You don't want to walk away and come back 30 minutes later and realize you can't beat it, because Paragon's staying unkillable. So that's the only thing I would worry about. But because we have stuns and freezes in this, it's not really anything we need to be careful about. So here we are at the boss. You can see we're getting those block debuffs from Scathic. I think that's massive. Prevents us from being sphered, prevents us from being stunned, and that shield that Scathic gives us helps us survive that hit. Then when we have Jareg give us that ally protection ability, that's going to be just as massive, because the damage we take will be halved, and I think that's absolutely huge. You can see Jarang is definitely the weakest link here and probably going to die at some point, but he's good against the boss, because we just need to land that decreased defense and decreased attack on one person. Here we go, right? And we're surviving with Broadma in there as well, giving us those revives, the increased speed. This is a pretty complete team, I would say. Also, Aox does healing. I forgot to mention that too. Really good. But you can see there's the AoE stun, the fear. He dies. That's okay. We don't need him to survive the full fight. We just need him to survive at the end. And there we go. We get the revive with the block damage, and we're in pretty good shape right now. Now, obviously, if you're doing this for the first time and you're trying to 3-star, you do need to time when you're getting those revives out. That's going to be really important compared to when you're killing the boss, because you really kind of want to revive right before the boss dies, and that will, you know, allow you to get the full 3 stars. We might not get the full 3 stars here, because I've beaten this already. I don't need to, you know, time it out just perfectly. But if I am doing it for the first time, I jump in, I would make sure to manual Broadma's revive at the right time here. And if I think it's a 2-person revive, it's a single target. I mean, the other part is just build, you know, the other champions a little bit tankier, a little bit tougher, so they aren't dying. There you go. Yeah, we brought them both back up right before the end of the boss. Like I said, this is exactly what we want to do. And there's our full 3 stars, exactly how I want to do it. And you can see, pretty darn successful. All right, so let's take a look at the champions and how I built them. Obviously, Jarang is in here. I'll be honest, not my favorite champion, but I kind of want to just try him out and see what we could do with him here. I definitely would recommend Venomage. I think a much better option, honestly, for both the boss and for the waves with his AoE abilities. But Jarang here, we've got pretty decently fast, 204 speed. Again, the more speed, the better. Good crit rate, good crit damage. You can see he was hitting hard, and you can get that out of him. He's got a really high base attack. Only 4,800 attack. I didn't build him like crazy, but, you know, he's definitely doing the work we want. He's pretty squishy, though. So, you know, that's one of the reasons why I felt we really needed Broadma. As far as masteries go, you can see, went down the Helm Smasher. Now, obviously, maybe that's not the best choice. Could do War Master or something else. I don't know. That's really going to make that much of a difference. And at this stage, too, I would say that Flawless Executioner would probably give us more damage than Helm Smasher would. Went down the support tree as well, just to make sure he landed all the debuffs he was throwing out there. Then we have Scathix here, and I actually have Scathix from a previous clan boss build that I had done. That's why I have him in Stalwart gear. But Stalwart's a great way to keep a champion alive that maybe otherwise wouldn't survive a lot of hits. He is built very well, right? 216 speed, that is something we want. Good crit rate, pretty good crit damage actually, which I don't think we really need when it comes down to it. He doesn't do a crazy amount of damage. I would probably prefer to switch that crit damage to more HP and survivability on him if I were to build him out again, to be honest with you. But he was great as far as keeping us alive with that ally, with the the block debuffs and the shield. I thought were really, really valuable. As far as the masteries go, we went down the offensive tree and the support tree also. And then we have Broadma. Obviously, you know, this is a champion that anybody out there can fuse, is like an Eternal Fusion champion. And our Reviver, super valuable. Also, the increased speed buff is really, really nice, honestly, even though it's a small one. Now, we have Broadma at 204 speed. Obviously, the more speed, the better, because the more often he goes, the faster he's going to be able to revive. The more often that increased speed buff will be on us. All those little things add up. Good HP, good defense. That's really what we're focused on. I do have some resistance on him. Don't necessarily need it, but it is helpful just to make sure he doesn't get debuffed and can survive, because that's the big thing. If our Reviver dies, the team dies. And if we look at the masteries, you'll notice I have no masteries on him. None. No masteries. Don't need them. Obviously, it would be nice to have those on, right? It would just help with the survivability and, you know, everything else. You know, the turn meter boost. I think we could go timely intervention would be really great. But, you know, as you can see, don't necessarily need it. And then I got Aox the Rememberer here, also from a previous clan boss build. I think we've got him in Stalwart gear. Got a little cruel set going on there. You'll notice that speed is abysmally low. And that's definitely something I would fix going back, right? The faster they are, the more attacks they take, the better. Also, Aox has our only heal really in this team. And so bringing him up to speed would be helpful, but 155 speed, not what we're really looking for. You can see the defense at 3,800, the HP at 3,500. The attack's probably too high, and what I would probably like to do is drop that attack, drop that crit damage. We don't really need it. And just build up the HP and build up the speed. And I think if we were able to do that, we'd be in much, much better shape. But my guess is I have, defense boots on here and probably defense chests on. Yeah, there's definitely some ways I could go about altering this to make him more viable for this part of the game. And I think that would be really helpful for us. As far as masteries go, got him going down the offense tree and support tree. Again, kind of a clan boss build I had here. And then very last is Jareg. Now, I've got Jareg in that new bolster set, which I actually really like, with the shield as well as the healing. I think that's actually a really nice set. I have them built really well. I use them for some of my Doom Tower teams, and I think that's why. But 246 speed, obviously fast, but that's good. More times he goes, the more often he's going to keep ally protection up. 320 accuracy, it is pretty high. 204 resistance is whatever. 72k HP. Built to survive is really the big thing with Jareg here. Mastery-wise, we got him going down the offense tree and the support tree. Again, maximizing his healing and maximizing his debuffs laning, the decreased attack especially. So guys, that's the team. That's the build. Hopefully this was helpful for you. As always, you know, just progress a little bit every day. You don't really need to go crazy with faction wars. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? You need 5 champions in every faction, and they have to work together. It's going to take some time, but once you start getting close, that's where you start looking at videos like this and figuring out exactly how do I want to build this team to get to that final result. And so hopefully this video was helpful in letting you guys do that. Again, don't forget to subscribe, and guys, till next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.